everybody, what's going on? David Potts with Song Notes here, and I want to do this lesson. I've been working on The Gambler by Kenny Rogers, and I'm on day one of practice, and what I just came up with is a little bit of an improvisational, sort of just some fun I had myself having with the chord progression The Gambler uses, kind of mimicking the melody you hear Kenny Rogers sing, at least I think. But more to the point, I just want to share this as an example of something that can happen when you play guitar, right? You want to pick up a song, you can get to a point where you learn a few techniques, a few building blocks, right? You can take just, the main shape of a song you might want to be learning. Maybe that's a chord progression or a sort of strumming style. And you can mix and match other sort of playing techniques that aren't necessarily heard in the version of the song you're learning, right? And that's okay. I sort of want to give you permission to do that. You don't always need to stay inside the box that another artist gives you when you're learning something on guitar. So I showed you the tab there to what I played, and you can get it on my website, playsongnotes.com. I have a link to the printout as well. So if you want to follow it note for note, do that. But more to the point with this lesson, what I want to do is talk about some of the techniques I was sort of using, some of those building blocks that I used to put this together, right? And then you can sort of pick and choose those techniques as you want if you want to play something like I played, or maybe you want to play that exact sort of little riff I did. And that's cool too, right? So let's look at this, right? So The Gambler by Kenny Rogers. I'm playing it in the key of D. It's a 3-chord song, right? So the first building block would be a chord progression, right? So let's start with that. It's really simple. It's basically 4 counts of D, right? So you gotta know when to hold 'em. Then 2 of G, and then 2 of D, 2 of G, 2 of D, 2 more of D, and then A. Then you repeat that whole thing, and the only thing that's different the second time around is the final A and the D are switched, right? So you gotta know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money when you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. Okay? Now, I'm 90% sure that's what the Kenny Rogers song uses. I'm not going to focus on what he exactly does for 100% sure. I'll say that for my lesson for The Gambler. But my point is, that's the progression I'm going to be sort of playing along with it, right? So I had my guitar and I was sort of strumming that progression, and it was natural for me to sort of want to pick out some of those melodic notes that you hear in The Gambler. So let's talk about a few ways I was doing that. One technique would be that of alternating bass notes when you're strumming, right? So instead of just doing, strumming all the strings, for the D, what we're gonna do is basically play that 4th string open and then strum the whole chord, then that 5th string open, strum the whole chord, right? So this would be the sort of the simplest way to do a walking bass note. And you could also sort of amp it up a little bit by, instead of just doing a single chord strum, you could do a down up, right? So a bass down up, 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 right? Now you can also do that with the G chord. Let's go from the 6th string to the 5th string, right? So this is another building block I'm going to be using throughout this lesson. And with the A chord. And the thing about these alternating bass notes is you don't always need to go from the root here. You don't need to go to a thicker string always, right? Instead of going from the 5th string to the 6th string, I could go from the 5th string to the 4th string. So this is the A, right? And then the D. So alternating bass notes. This is one building block. You could just sort of have fun going through these 3 chords, just doing some alternating bass notes, right? It's a nice little way to have a little groove for yourself, get a little pattern going, okay? So that's one thing. Another technique I was using is sort of using this A major shape that I'm using just one finger on, right? So I'm only playing the middle 4 strings. I'm sort of muting the thinnest string with my index finger. It's sort of lightly leaning on it, and I'm sort of lightly touching the low thick E string as well. So that way I can just sort of strum all 6 strings and I get those middle 4 strings ringing. So I have a whole lesson on that technique. You find it in the description of this video. That's yet another technique I'm using for the A chord. While we're on the topic of chords, another building block I'm using is for the G. instead of doing, a regular open G, I'm actually playing it right here on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th string. That's 5th fret, 4th fret, 3rd fret, right? With my ring, middle, and index finger, right? What this is it's basically this shape, like the F. If you recognize an F major bar chord, you move it up 2 frets. That's a G major bar chord. But I'm only playing the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th string of it, okay? So that's another sort of technique I'm using. I'm only trying to really get those 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings to ring. Okay, so that's another voicing I'll be doing. So I have the D, I have the A, I have this G, okay? So those are other parts of the building blocks. Now with alternating bass notes on that G, if you wanted to do it, you could do, this is maybe a bit more semi-advanced in that you have to have good muting skills. Like you really don't want any of these strings to make discernible noises unless it's the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th string. But when you're playing that 5th string, you're using your ring finger and you want to lightly lean the ring finger into the 4th string to mute that 4th string. So there we go. Let's review the building blocks. Okay, so I'm just playing around with those chord voicings using the alternating bass note strumming. We're sort of on our way, right? Another thing you might be doing is palm muting, and I have a whole separate lesson on this too. The idea is you basically want to rest the fleshy part of your pinky under your pinky on your hand here into the string. So what that does is if you do it, it kind of makes the sound a bit more muffled as opposed to, that ringing sound. So what that does is if you were to do alternating bass notes, right? That's another little building block you can use. So I've been using all those. Now let's talk about some other things I've been doing. I've been doing a lot of walk-ups and walk-downs. And by that, what I mean is if we're going into a chord, we're, instead of just starting to play that chord, right, like D, instead of just starting on the bass note of the D chord, let's walk up to it. So here, I'm sort of walking up on the 5th string, open 5th string, 2nd fret, 4th fret on the 5th string, and then you go to the D. And the great thing about that walk up is you can practice it. You can walk up to that D and do the alternating bass note 4 times, and then do it again. And you can just kind of get in a little groove, a little rhythm, and take it slow as you need to, right? I'm going a little bit quick here. Now there's other chords we can walk up to. And specifically what we're going to be doing is walking up to this G chord. And we're going to be walking up on the 4th string by going open, 2nd fret, 4th fret, okay? With our index finger on the 2nd fret, ring finger on the 4th fret, and then that ring finger just slides up 1 fret to the root of that G chord that we were just doing, right? 5th fret, 4th string. So, we know how to do this D to G transition. Now we're just going to walk up. Right, so we have these chord shapes, and now we're walking between them. Up to the D and up to the G. Okay? So that's another sort of technique we have, is walking up to certain chords and down to certain chords. Another one we have is this idea of on the D chord, we're going to use our pinky on some of these bass notes. So this is a regular D major chord. One note we're going to be hitting is this 4th fret of the 4th string. This is an F sharp bass note. Okay, this is kind of tricky, and I actually have a video on this technique too, this idea of these pinky stretches on the D major chord. It comes down to angling your hand correctly. Check out my video if you're having trouble with it. And another one we have to do is go to this C sharp note on the 5th string, the 4th fret of the 5th string, okay? So with those 2 notes, if we can play those notes, when our hand's in the D position, what it lets us do is get some of those bass note, alternating bass note and sort of the walking bass sound. We're going to use these notes in the riff. So this is one technique I'm using as well. And then what else is there? I think the other one would be from this A position, we're going to want to use, similarly, we'll want to use our ring finger or our pinky on that same note, that 4th fret of the 4th string, coming from this barred A, okay? Now, with all those little building blocks together, we can look at this entire riff now and recognize those building blocks, right? So we start off with the walk up to D, then the alternating bass note, then walk up to G, and on the G, we're gonna alternate bass note, but we're gonna go up to the 3rd string. So, then bring our pinky on the D major here, right? Again, and then we're gonna go to the regular D chord, then put our pinky down here on the C sharp, and then go back to the regular D bass note. Okay? And then A. All right, you see that? So basically, do the whole thing slow. The first half here, slow. Walk up, alternate, walk up, alternate, pinky, alternate, D, pinky, D, D, C sharp bass, A, pinky, and then back to the D, okay? So again, that's all those building blocks sort of used there. And also, I'll do it once at full speed again. Now again, if you know The Gambler, the song, I think those bass lines kind of mimic maybe what Kenny Rogers is singing, right? On the warm summer's evening, on the train bound for nowhere. I might be stretching this and making this up in my head, but it sounds good to me. Da 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 da. You never count show money when you're sitting at the table. Time enough for dealing, yeah, when the dealing's done. Okay, I mess up the words and, you know, my playing was a bit sloppy there. But again, I just want to show you, you can take a song, you can take the sort of spirit of the song, maybe it's the picking style, maybe it's the melody, maybe it's a chord progression, maybe it's a bunch of that stuff, and then you can go off the rails, you can explore, leave the path, right? Use some of these building blocks or pull in your own sort of techniques, right? I'm just sort of going to what I enjoy playing, which is a lot of this rhythmic, bass-liney, acoustic stuff. Like I love Johnny Cash. I don't know, I like having that perpetual sound. So, you know, here I was playing this, walking around the house and really loving it. And I figured, hey, I'd make this little quick video to show you what you can do. And remember that if you want to learn the proper song, The Gambler, as Kenny Rogers plays it, or a bit more, you know, if you want to stay on the rails, that's fine too. I'll have a video for that, and you can learn that song. But again, it's whether you're learning the song or you're just improvising, there's no wrong choice when it comes to music. And I just want to show you an example of how you can sort of explore and have fun. But this has been David Potts, y'all. Thanks for watching, and especially if you made it to the end of this video, I really appreciate it. I want to give a thanks to all those who support me on Patreon, who send me tips through my tip jar on my website, who leave me just the kindest comments and write the nicest emails. It really is awesome to hear all the ways that these lessons are helping you, and please continue to send your feedback and requests and all that stuff. And I love to help how I can. But thanks again to everyone. I'm gonna go now, and have a great night. All right, bye-bye, y'all.